All right, slide 16, our metaphysical puzzle. Remember, we're doing the metaphysics, the reality status of axiology. So we're putting together two of the main fields of philosophy. The three main fields are: one, epistemology, the study of knowledge; two, metaphysics, the study of reality; and three, axiology, the study of values and value judgments. So we're putting together reality status questions in metaphysics with axiology questions in the study of values. What's the metaphysics, the reality status of value judgments? Okay, so sample puzzle on this slide, slide 16, which is sample puzzle, where we have introduced my philosophical friend, Mr. Lemon, who's a very cool lemon because, as you could see, if you look at the slide in the PowerPoint, Mr. Lemon has on cool shades, sunglasses, right, to block out the light, because light is an issue when it comes to the lemon, as we'll discover shortly. So let's look at the lemon and ask the question, the metaphysical question about the reality status of some of its characteristics. Are they subjective, objective, or intersubjective? Remember, subjective means has something to do with the characteristics of the mind, the brain, or the sense organs perceiving a thing. Objective means something like the object has those characteristics whether or not anybody perceives them, right? Those characteristics are independent of the perceiver. And intersubjective is characteristics that look like they're objective, but only because all members of the entire group or an entire species perceive them that way. So they're subjective, but all members of the species experience them the same way because they all have the same sense organs, or the same minds, or the same beliefs, or the same attitudes. Okay, so the first set of characteristics of the lemon are that lemon has a certain kind of taste. It's kind of tart and sour, right? And there's a little bit, tiny little bit of sweetness in the lemon. Now, some of you can't even detect the sweetness, or some of you love the lemon taste so much that it doesn't strike you as tart. But let's just kind of suppose that all of us experience the taste of the lemon the same way, right? Let's just say we all acknowledge that it has a tart, lemony tartness to it. And let's leave out sour and sweet. Sour and sweet, leave it aside. I feel bad that I even mentioned it, because I want us all to be on the same page, which, by the way, is page 27. Just happens to be my lucky number. All right? So when human beings taste the tartness of a lemon, is that a characteristic of the lemon, or is that a characteristic of our tongues, or both? Think about it, and remember, when I ask you to think about something, you can pause the video and think about it. All right, I assume that you came back, so I'll just continue. All human beings seem to taste lemons, and they have that tangy, tart, sour, sweet blend to it. They all taste the same way to all of us. So, but human beings, we can suck on and drink and eat lemons, so to speak, but members of other species can't, because when they taste them, it's noxious to them, right? So it seems that whatever lemons taste like to us, that's at least partly a feature of our tongues and how our minds interpret the sensations coming in on our tongues, right? I don't have it on the list, but what about citric acid, right? What accounts for the tartness of a lemon, right? That little tangy taste, which is in grapefruits and limes and other citric fruits, is citric acid. Is this chemical compound objective, subjective, or intersubjective? Well, we can identify that it exists by looking at a drop of lemon juice or grapefruit juice or whatever under a microscope and look at the chemical compound and see that whatever the chemical compound of citric acid is, that it's there, right? So that makes that objective. And in fact, that objective component, citric acid, that exists in the liquid juice inside the lemon is what gives human beings who have tongues and brains like us the sensation of its flavor. Beings with different kinds of tongues and brains that are exposed to citric acid experience it differently. So the taste of citric acid seems to be intersubjective. It depends on a whole species of beings that have tongues and brains being a certain way. Whereas the citric acid itself, that this chemical compound is citric acid, that seems to be objective, right? I'm simplifying things, but I want you to understand the distinction. If something is objective, it exists. It's real. Its reality and existence is independent of your mind and your sense organs and whether or not any other creature or being that has any kind of sense organs whatsoever ever encounters it. That's what we think objective means, that its existence is mind independent, right? Like there's a certain rock on the moon. It exists whether or not we ever discover it, whether or not we see it, right? Like, or let's just say the number of rocks that are larger than 2 inches in diameter. Whatever that number is, it's an exact number. And that's what the number of rocks on the moon that are that size are. Whether or not we ever discover it is independent of its truth and reality and their existence, their being, right? Okay, so objective, subjective. What about the shape of the lemon? Now, obviously it's only sort of oval shaped because you got that little nub on the top and on the bottom. Suppose you cut those off and you made it perfectly oval shaped. Let's just assume then, for the sake of the argument, that the lemon is oval shaped. Is the lemon's being oval shaped a feature of the lemon or a feature of our perception? Pause to think about that. Okay, I assume you're back now. Aristotle gave us a clue, a criterion that he thought, a test that you could use to figure out whether or not something was subjective or objective. And what Aristotle said was if you could verify the characteristic of the thing in question using 2 sense organs, like eyes and the sense of touch, to verify the same characteristic, then that was really good evidence that that characteristic was objective, because you've got independent verification. You've got sight and touch. It looks oval, and when I feel the shape of it, it feels oval, right? So you've got 2 different ways of evaluating the oval shape, and they correspond with each other. What I see and what I feel map onto each other. They're the same in my consciousness, right? So you can see an oval shape and you could test it with your hands. You can feel it, right? So Aristotle thought if you can verify the characteristic of an object with 2 senses, then it's objective. So the shape of a lemon, he concluded, is objective. Isn't this brilliant? This is a human being. Remember what I said about what philosophers do? We analyze concepts and then we test them against sentences and claims and other things that we know and see if they make sense or if they don't, right? And we examine them, we think about them, we imagine alternatives, we try to figure things out, we use our imagination. This is what we do. So Aristotle did this about 2,300 years ago. Brilliant to come up with this criterion. Similarly, about the size of a lemon, right? You can measure it with a ruler, but you can see it with your eyes, and you could also feel